Hi everyone! So today we're going to be looking at oil pastels. Now, I've had this set in my drawer for years and I've only just opened it up today to have a go with them. I think I've been quite worried about trying them out because I know that oils are a notoriously difficult medium to work with. They're smelly and they're just not one of those go-to products that a colourist generally uses. So yeah, I thought I'd be brave today and have a go and see what they can do. So I've had a little bit of a test before the video, but this is very much trial and error for me and I'm learning just as you are. So hopefully this video will help beginners with oil pastels and the fact that you can use them in colouring books. I really didn't think you'd be able to. I thought they'd be too much of a greasy, heavy medium to be used in colouring books, but anyway, I'll get on with it. So the set that I have is the Pentel Arts Oil Pastels. It's a set of 50 and as I say, I've had this for years. So I've opened them up and yes, they do stink. It hits you right in the face straight away. Luckily, they come with a bit of a cover that you can put on in between times to get rid of that smell a little bit, but they do have a very, very heavy, strong smell. So if you're somebody who's sensitive to that kind of thing, I probably wouldn't recommend working with oils if you can help it. I also have some cotton buds here and some Spectrum Noir blending solution. Now this is just another name for odourless mineral spirit, so you don't need to have the Spectrum Noir brand, but any kind of mineral spirit that you have will work. It's a solvent and it just helps the medium break down and blend. So I have here some watercolour paper. This is by Arteza, it's the watercolour pad, but I will be showing you in a second how it works on standard paper. It's slightly different, but it shows that it can be used in colouring books. Okay, so what I'm going to do is a simple blend. So I'm going to grab some greens first of all. Let's go with the lightest one we have here, which is a number 55 pale green. And I'm just going to scribble this on. It feels very much like a wax crayon. So I'm putting it on, and as you can see, this is a watercolour paper. It's got a very deep, heavy tooth, so you can see all the white speckling, but don't worry about that. Next one is number 17 yellow green, and I'm just going to put that directly underneath. You could, I suppose, go over the top a little bit to help the blend, but you don't really need to. Next we have number 21 green. So again, just putting it next to it, you don't have to layer them. Then there's number 22 deep green. And I think this is the darkest green that's in the set. It's number 57 dark green, and I'll just put a bit of that on the end so we can go from really light to really dark. So I've got my cotton bud, Q-tip. Wherever you are in the world you'll have a different name for it, but you can get them really cheaply from your local drugstore. And these ones actually have a flat end and a pointed end, so that's the flat end is really handy for getting like quite a large area done at once. So I've dipped it in and I've sort of shook it off. And we'll always start from the lightest colour when we're doing a blend. Obviously you don't want to drag any of this dark pigment up into your light colours and sully them. So we'll start at the lighter end, and straight away you'll be able to see that the oil pastel is completely melting and dissolving with this solution. And I'm just coming down, I'm going from left to right, but I'm also doing a bit of a circular motion as well because I don't want there to be too many lines apparent. So a circular left to right motion, just going down, not doing any fancy technique, and you can see just how well these blend together. It's so easy. There's no real kind of skill needed, you're just rubbing over it, and then you can turn over the cotton bud when you feel like the solution is starting to get a bit dry, and just continue down. So that is a pretty fantastic blend straight off the bat, but as you can see, each colour still looks a little bit blocky and not blended enough. So what I do is I turn over my cotton bud, dip it back in, and then just go over those sections where the two colours meet, and using little tiny circular motions I'm going to attempt to further blend and make this a bit more seamless. And the great thing about this odourless mineral spirits is they can be reworked for quite a long time, and you can also layer it, so you can go back in with more if you need to later. But that does sometimes bring up the problem of you lifting the pigment out. If you use too much, you'll start to notice a bleached effect, a little bit like I have done there. So you kind of have to get that happy medium of how much spirit to use and still retain the depth and the saturation of the pigment. So as you can see, I'm just kind of working at the lines between each colour. I'm really trying to get that as blended as I possibly can. And it's not difficult, and as you can see, this is quite a large area that I've done, and it's only taken a minute or two. So if you can imagine this as a background on a colouring book, or just some way to fill a big space, maybe a sky blend or something like that, you can see how quickly and how easily you could do this. Now, of course, chalk pastels, which we all use quite a lot in colouring, you can do the same thing with this. Obviously, you don't need the mineral spirits. You just blend them quite easily with a fingertip or a dry Q-tip. But unless you're using the really high quality pastels like pan pastels, you're not going to get that vibrancy. And I think that's the bonus of using the oil pastels, is you're getting a vibrancy there, and it's not being diluted as long as you keep the amount of odorless mineral spirit you're using quite light. So if you just keep working, you'll find that very, very quickly you'll have a really smooth transition between each colour. So here's a couple of blends that I did before I started the video, just to play around with them. As you can see, I've got the green blend here. I think I put a bit of blue in the middle as well. And then this is pink to a red violet, and then into an ultramarine blue. So this one isn't quite as good a transition, I don't think. I think the red into the purple could have done with a few more in-between colours, just to make it a little smoother. But anyway, I think it's a really nice blend as it goes. Now, as for sealing these, I'm pretty sure that there will be a oil fixative on the market. I don't have one, I only have a chalk pastel fixative. But to be honest with you, I'm just going to rub over it. You don't really get a lot of transfer onto your fingers anyway, and it doesn't have that powdery, dusty residue that chalk pastels have, so there's that bonus as well. Now, I did say that I would show you how it is on standard paper. This is a really thin piece of paper that I ripped out of a sketchbook. It's nothing special at all, and I think this time we will try a red to orange blend. So I'm going to grab, this is kind of a vermilion colour, it is vermilion, so let's go from that. So a really orangey red, and then straight into number 3 orange, and then we'll need a yellowed orange. What's this one? Yeah, number 2 yellow orange. So we know that this is going to blend together quite nicely anyway, because they all sit together on the colour wheel. The next one I'll do is number 12 yellow, and I think we'll see what happens with that. So I've got my cotton bud again, and by the way, if you do try and just rub these together with a dry cotton bud like I'm doing here, you can see it doesn't have a lot of effect at all. So you do kind of need that mineral spirit just to dissolve all the pigment, I suppose. So I've dipped it in. I'm going to go from light to dark. I've done it the other way around just to confuse myself. But we're going from light to dark. Now on this paper, which doesn't have a tooth or much of a tooth, you can feel the difference straight away. So obviously watercolour mixed media paper, it's made for this. This paper isn't. And when I say you can feel the difference, you can probably see the difference as well, because every sort of mark that you make is really, really apparent. You can see every line, every swish that I'm doing, and it just feels like it's sitting on top of the paper rather than being absorbed into it. So that's the feeling that I'm getting, and hopefully you can see that as well. But still, it blends really, really nicely. I would say that maybe it loses a bit of vibrancy because it's not managing to keep the pigments absorbed into the paper or something. I don't know, I'm not an art person, but it definitely doesn't seem as bright and bold as it does when you're on a mixed media paper, because that's what it's made for. So as I'm coming back down, I'm really lightly going over it, because if you do try and go hard over it, you will see those lines. So I'm really lightly going over, and I'm sort of turning my cotton bud at the same time, because I really don't want to transfer too much of that dark colour down towards the yellow, but I am trying to blend out the lines a little bit, and straight down into the yellow. you can see that it's still quite a nice blend, even on standard paper. So I have Miniature Secret Garden here. It's a Johanna Basford book, and it's kind of my little practice book before I go into the large scale ones, so I can just mess around with techniques in this book. Now what I want to do is I want to do a blend with the oil pastels all the way across an image, so it's almost like a wash, because I want to see first of all how that would play with coloured pencil on top, and then secondly if oil pastels bleed through, if they, you know, how they react on actual colouring book paper. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a blue blend, I think. So we'll start off with this. This is number 14 pale blue, and as I say, I'm just going to go over the whole lot. Now you can see also how this is going to benefit doing a really large area with this medium. So as I said earlier, skies, water, bodies of water, things like that. Then I'm going to use the 51 blue. Again, it's really rough and ready. Don't need to do anything special here. And then number 23 cobalt blue. So it is really nice to have these miniature books because, as I say, I use them as technique practice books before I do the big piece in the bigger books. Let's just see if we can get one more colour out of this. What we got here? Ultramarine, just to deepen it a bit at the bottom. And now we're going to cover those up because they absolutely stink. You will have to do this in a ventilated area, especially if you're prone to headaches and migraines from smells. It really, really is very strong. Okay, so I've got my cotton bud. Pop it in the blending solution, and of course going from light to dark. So what this is going to demonstrate is how oil pastels can work in actual colouring books. It's all right me doing it on different types of paper and in a sketchbook, but this channel is all about colouring mainly, and you know, people are going to want to know if they can use this technique in their colouring books, if they can use this medium, and if it's worth doing or not, which of course is going to be down to you to decide. I still don't know whether I'm going to use this often as a medium in my colouring books, but it's just another medium that you can use. It's another idea, and yeah, just hopefully it will inspire you. Now with this being a larger area, I may need to do another dip because these mineral spirits do tend to evaporate quite quickly. So you will probably need a couple of dips. I'm not going all the way to the edge of the paper. This is not meant to be a beautiful, neat thing. It's just a demonstration. Now you'll notice that there's a lot of lines on this. You can see every single pass of the cotton bud, and there is a way to combat that. Just a little bit more on there. So once you've covered it and you've got the kind of blend that you're after, while the odourless mineral spirit is still wet, you can actually go in there with your fingertip and just magically erase all of these lines that you can see. It's really, really cool. So I'm starting off again at the top of the page with the lightest colour, and I'm doing a really light pressure with my finger. There's barely any touch there whatsoever. And just going over it just manages to reduce the lines a little bit. It buffs them out, and you get a little bit more of a blended look, which you'll probably see with these darker areas. They're just circular motions with my fingertip, and the blend just starts to get really, really smooth. Gorgeous. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this to dry because, well, I say dry, odourless mineral spirits evaporate. but when you're using them, you will know, whether you use them on pencils or whatever, that they do kind of bleed through to the back for a little while until they evaporate, and then it's completely gone. So I'll leave it to dry, I'll come back and I'll show you how we can use pencil over the top. Okay, so it's almost dry. It's still got a slight bit of evaporating to do, but I'm impatient and I want to get on with it. So let's see what pencil looks like on top then. So I'm going to get, I've got my polychromos here, by the way. Let's just get a Delft Blue. It can be any pencil, doesn't have to be polychromos. But let's have a go at some blending and see how the pencil looks and works on top of the oil. So I'm just going to do a simple hard pressure to light pressure blend here, and as you can see, it's layering beautifully. There's no kind of residue on the pencil or anything like that whatsoever, so it's perfectly fine to go over the top with your pencils, and you can still create that nice dark to light blend. So don't forget, this is just a demonstration from an amateur with this medium. I'm sure that you could play around with it and get some really, really great results. But I think that I've shown you can use it in colouring books. It doesn't make any difference to the flip side. Obviously, you'll have to test it in whatever colouring book you're using, but for this one, it's fine. As you can see, you can make beautiful blends on any kind of paper, and hopefully you'll be able to find a fixative for it. If I find one on Amazon, I'll link it below. But yeah, so that's my little demo, my little test of oil pastels. Obviously I need a little bit more practice, but I think compared to chalk pastels, as I've said before, you still retain all that vibrancy of colour. So yeah, I actually prefer the end look of this to pastels. So thank you very much for watching along and learning with me, and I will see you soon on Colour with Claire.